Hey, leader. Welcome to Stop, Drop, and Roll, the podcast dedicated to empowering you at the intersection of work and home in leadership, with or without the title. I'm Jen Caceres, here to meet you right where you are and help you intentionally grow as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve along your leadership journey. Welcome back, everyone, to Stop, Drop, and Roll, where we talk with leaders and about leadership topics for anyone with or without the title, using it at home or at work. Today, I am excited to introduce my special guest, Michelle Moffitt. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Today, we are going to talk all about the amazing things that you are doing in the space of leadership. I know you have a book and a practice and everything that you're working on. I'm going to give you just a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure. I am a psychotherapist by trade and education. I function as a leadership coach as well, and I tend to work with very high functioning women who are going through change. So, whether that's a death or a divorce or career change, empty nesting, menopause, that's where I end up finding myself. I have 5 adult children who are all amazing and a very handsome partner, and I love sports.
All right, right. 5 children and a handsome partner. I love the way you threw that in there. Great. That's great. I want to introduce that Michelle has recently published her book. It is called Cracked Open. Well, listeners, you know how this works. We go through the stop, drop, and roll process. And so we are going to start with reflections. My first question really has to do with reflecting on some things within the book. So, Michelle, in Cracked Open, you speak so vulnerably about transformation. And for those of you who haven't read the book yet, I highly recommend it. I'm hoping that you can share with us a moment that really cracked you open as the leader of your life.
Sure. For a little bit of giving the book away, but not too much, I was in a high control religious organization. And oftentimes, my book might fall in a religious trauma space, but the pathology of high control is at large in a lot of different organizations and communities. In my story, I was part of this organization that women didn't have leadership roles. Women were not allowed to make the final decisions in their family. They couldn't serve or have certain titles within the religious organization either. And so I was finding myself in a really hard situation. My husband at the time was struggling with a lot of mental health issues, had been incredibly abusive for the entirety of our marriage, had lied about multiple things. And I was reaching out for help from the leaders in the organization. I didn't know where else to go because I needed protection. And so I'm sitting in a room with 8 men and 1 woman and reading a 3-page document about what had happened in my marriage for 25 years. And I look up expecting help, and they said, "We don't believe you. You need to repent." That was really the moment that I started cracking open and thinking, repentance in this religious world means I'm going the wrong way, and now I need to go the right way. And so, what is the right way that they're asking me to do? And basically, they were asking me to sit down and shut up. The abuse that I was dealing with was intolerable anymore. And this is why I was reaching out for help. So, it was really a moment of having to decide what I was going to do and how I was going to start learning to trust myself again and learning to listen to my intuition or whatever you would call that, and starting to make a plan to move forward.
Wow. I remember reading the introduction of your book and just stopping in my tracks and trying to put myself in that situation and the feelings that you must have been experiencing in that moment where everything you knew, everything that you were a part of felt just the way you described it, having to start over, to literally cracked open.
Mhm.
That is just so powerful in that moment. So thank you for sharing that. That is a huge reflection. I'm sure it just led into so many other things, especially writing the book.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, the title I originally wanted to use was I Changed My Mind, My Journey with Repentance. And my editor said, we don't want to use the word repentance because the book will get in the wrong hands and then I'll get bad reviews. Um,
Mm.
but, I think the big aha moment for me was I was coming from this community of certainty. They had all the right answers and they spoon fed it to the community. So you learn to not trust yourself. And I would call that being gut washed. The process for me of learning to test belief systems, of learning to embrace change, to say, I'm not sure I really believe that, or what if I tried something different? And so that just became the journey of transformation for me, of learning to sit in that liminal space of unknown and being okay there, and then trying different things, trying on new belief systems or different ways to do life.
Yeah, that is impactful in that self reflection with having to teach yourself to be okay in that space. That's just so powerful. What would be a belief that you maybe once held about leadership that you really outgrew with that self awareness?
Well, specifically in the religious organization that I was a part of, women couldn't lead, that men were somehow more capable or better than women, and women's voices are really taken from them. That was a huge one of being able to change that belief that I don't think women are less than men. I wasn't raised like that. My family was very progressive. Parents were very big on feminism in the true sense of equality for everybody. So that was a huge belief system that I shifted from. I think also that leadership can't be tested, that maybe the leaders have the wrong answers or can learn more or be vulnerable. I think those are huge things that I've come out of these spaces with.
Oh, absolutely. The whole experience is so powerful. As a psychotherapist and a CEO of your own business, Five Oaks Counseling and Coaching, how have your personal growth and professional insights that you've gained, how have those shaped each other?
They just go hand in hand. We are human, everyone. And part of psychology is understanding pathology. There is a certain way that people show up in the world. There's certain tendencies that we have. Our stories are different yet similar in so many ways. Transformation, growth, hardship, suffering, those are things that all humans experience. And so any one of my clients is part of my continuing ed, right? To understand their specific way that of their story, their biases, but then my own story plays into that. And as we continue to lean into growth, we want to grow, we recognize that in each other and we can borrow or
Mhm.
help each other along the way with the ways that we grow.
Absolutely. It's interesting in your book, you identify with that term change scientist.
Hmm.
And I love that. As we move into the observe stage of stop, drop, and roll, and really observing and kind of thinking about this concept of a change scientist, what patterns have you observed in leaders that resist personal change, especially when it comes to that emotional self awareness?
Change is always uncomfortable, and we resist that. Michael Easter, if you want to quote that book, it's called The Comfort Crisis. And one of his little tags is the 2%. Our bodies are designed to change. The world is changing around us. Sort of every 7 years, our bodies, every cell has been replaced. So, in essence, we become new people. So, change is inevitable, but we resist it because it doesn't feel good. So when we can even make that part conscious in our brains to say, oh, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now. This is what change feels like, then I can lean into it more. I think if you haven't been raised with emotions, emotions are uncomfortable. And so for leaders, being able to just take out an emotion wheel and say, how am I feeling right now? What is this called? Then you can start moving through the emotion. Emotions are just indicators of what's going on for us in our environment. And so when we can look at that and say, oh, I feel frustrated right now. What do I want to do with this frustration? Instead of bottling it up and then it explodes later, just being able to understand our bodies are naturally designed to move through emotions. And so understanding the discomfort and understanding that you can keep moving.
Yeah, it is so uncomfortable to change, right? I mean, I don't know anybody that they're like, yeah, pick me, I want to change.
Yeah, sign
Um,
me up.
exactly. I know that you mentioned you work with female leaders, primarily, probably everyone out there leading, but what would you say as you're talking to them and you're observing behaviors and those types of things, even around emotion? What is often missing in, let's say, like a leadership development program or something that might be within an organization when it comes to mental health and true emotional intelligence?
Well, just like sign me up to change, I think sign me up to feel, I would call them negatively charged emotions. Specifically for women, I think that we have been trained to kind of numb so that we can succeed or find status and not have those labels placed on us like, oh, you're just being emotional, or it must be that time of the month, or those sorts of things. And so being able to, in the leadership development programs, being able to validate that emotions are actually part of our human experience. We have data that says emotions in a board meeting or in the workplace actually helps with innovation and creativity and being able to understand difference between people. And so we can embrace that and actually be more creative. I think another thing that's been missing by and large in the leadership development, we really focus on strengths, but we oftentimes fail to notice the places that our strengths can be our weaknesses and how do we grow in that.
Mm,
So I don't think everybody needs to have all the strengths,
yeah.
right? That's just not a reality. But our strengths can also be our weaknesses. And then how do we acknowledge that? How do we see that? And how do we allow others to be the mirror in that space to go, hey, you're doing that thing over there.
Right, right. Yeah, and I know that you work with folks on Enneagram and those personality assessments. What you said really brought up something for me because I do Clifton Strengths and a lot of coaching with that. And that is one of the biggest focuses is your biggest strengths are also the things that get in your way the most. You don't realize it, but because it's so natural and it is something that you do without thinking, it's also that thing that gets in your way. I have to agree with you on that. I think that's a great way of looking at things.
Yeah. I think also, Jen, it's the social awareness piece at work as well. So
Mm,
while I might have these strengths, I'm assuming everyone else does, or I'm assuming everyone thinks this certain way about something or approaches a problem the same way. I love the Clifton Strengths because when you're doing the workshops, you're sitting there going, oh, your strengths are different than mine.
mm,
Oh, okay. Like it's just the light bulbs go off, right? Like,
right.
oh, you show up differently. And I know with the Enneagram, for me, one of my business partners, I would all day long, I'm a 7, so I'm thinking of a million things at once. They call it monkey mind. And I would listen to something, read an article, find a quote, and I'm pinging her all day long. The stuff she's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be reading this. Am I supposed to drop everything I'm doing and listen to this right now? What does Michelle expect of me? So her first response was, I'm going to need to learn how to work with you with this. The reflection for me was, no, actually, this is a me problem
Mm,
and I'm not helping her. So I can make a document and put all those things that I think about all week and then evaluate at the end of the week what I want to give her. Right.
yeah.
So I'm not making her crazy like I am.
No, it's wonderful self-reflection. It's something that they don't teach you that. That's not necessarily something that you're taught. And then when you enter a new group or you're working with someone new, you just kind of assume that they get you. They're not in your head though. They don't understand
Right.
why you're pinging them. Yeah, great points. So, as we walk into the listening phase of Stop, Drop, and Roll, that importance of listening to ourselves, what does that really mean for you in your work beyond strategy or productivity? What does that really mean to listen to yourself?
Hmm. Great question. When we use the words contemplative or consider, like being able to actually pause, and that's the human being instead of the human doing. Let me be human in this little situation or this problem I'm trying to figure out or the strategy. I use an exercise with my clients for your three brains. We know we have obviously have brain cells in our head, but we also have brain cells in our heart and in our gut. And our job as leaders is to align those. So the brain is, how do I think about this situation? What research do I know? What opinions have I been given? It's all the executive functioning, problem solving. And then how do I feel about this answer or this problem? Is my body open or closed? Oftentimes we will say, I think I feel. So this is the big one I work on with most of my clients is no, just say I feel. How do you feel?
Hmm.
And then we go to our gut, and the gut, I would say, is the seat of intuition. And it's how do I feel about this specific thing in this moment, not what has happened in the past, not what somebody else is saying. How do I feel about this? When we can align those, it just takes a minute, then we can make a better decision for ourselves.
I'm just curious how those conversations go. Are those aha moments, or is it, gosh, I'm not really sure. I can't figure this out. Does it come pretty naturally?
I think both, and it depends on the person. A lot of times, if I'm online, clients will lean in like this and like, well, what do you think? I'm like, nope, not up to me. So I would say at the beginning, just try asking yourself, what do you want to eat? Not what is everybody else ordering, not counting out like, oh, how many vegetables did I have today? What is my body telling me? What is my brain telling me? What is my feeling telling me I need right now? So that's a good little exercise to start at the beginning when you do start listening to yourself.
Wow. And just thinking about that and the concept of how busy we all are and how we start just having these habits of going with what everybody else is thinking and we don't actually slow down to think about that. I really appreciate that. Michelle, how do you think leaders learn to listen for emotional undercurrents in a room, especially if they're not, you're a trained therapist, you're a coach. If they don't have those professional skills, if you will, how do they learn that?
Listening is so underrated. And there's research that I was just reading about that talked about the introverted leader and how they actually make better decisions than an extroverted leader. There's a really great book. I'm going to give a plug for my friend Andrew, and his book is called Listening Without Agenda. He is a coach and he goes in and helps people listen. It turns out that leaders might not be listening at work and they're also not listening at home. Learning to listen, like it's painful because your brain is spinning about all the answers that you want to give or all the input you want to have or your own opinion instead of just hearing from someone else. Recognizing that your employees or the people that you're working with have a different bias, they have a different backstory, different biology, and their experience in the world has been completely different than yours, but it's valuable and it can add to whatever project you're working on, add creativity, innovation. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. So, learning active listening, hey, it's my turn to talk, and here's what I heard you say. Oftentimes, we're just moving so quickly, we're ready to jump in with whatever answer we think or our own opinions.
That is definitely an underrated skill, and it's not a soft skill in my mind. That's something that we all can do better. And like you mentioned, just even at home with our significant other, with our children or our neighbors or family, right? Yeah, that role of listening is huge. So, as we work into moving forward, really thinking about a couple of the things that you mentioned in your book, you advocate that better humans equal better leaders. Could you give us some practical steps that sort of move someone from maybe high functioning but disconnected to more self aware and impactful?
Yes, a lot of times leaders are high functioning, they've been trained a certain way, maybe through education, through work, or even through mentorship. And here's the right way that you're supposed to answer these questions. Here's the right way that you're supposed to show up. So you're just mimicking somebody who came before you. And we have so many great leaders and so many amazing documentaries and books to read about leadership. But the whole self-awareness piece is really what we've been missing. And so I might get some examples from people that have been in a similar situation and thought, how do they work through this? But how am I going to work through this? What is the issue here for me? And again, I think it's that the word certainty. Certainty is the worst obstacle to growth. Like it is saying there's only one way to solve this problem. There's only one right way. And if we get into the psychology of that a little bit, we are binary thinkers by design. We think good, bad, right, wrong, in, out. And if we're going to grow and evolve into better humans, the idea is how do we embrace complexity? This is the way of saying, what is somebody else thinking? How does that make my story bigger? How does that make my vision bigger? And being able to recognize I'm different, you're different. So leaders really moving away from somebody else did it just like this, and I need to do it just like that too,
Yeah.
and getting away from certainty. The problem there is that because we are binary thinkers, we don't want to move away from something that is certain because what our brain tells us is we won't survive. So
Uh,
if I'm not doing it the same as someone else, then I'm doing it different. And my subconscious tells me different's bad. Different is out. I'm not going to survive. I'm going to be alone. And so we'll keep going to this place of like, well, it's always been done like this
yeah.
without more self-awareness.
And I wonder how much that really gets in our way. I like to describe it as the things that we've outgrown, and it's the things that are no longer serving us, but we continue to do them because it feels right.
Hmm.
And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Is we can't grow because we just get in our own way.
Hmm. Yeah, the word that I use for that discomfort is dissonance.
Okay.
And when we can acknowledge or even like consciously understand, oh, this is what change feels like. I feel it in my cells. It's in my body. I feel really yuck, right? And knowing, oh, this is change. And so how do I want to work through this? How do I want to move forward through it instead of getting stuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Just recognizing that it's changed. That's one step. I love
That's one
that.
step. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. How do you think organizations can support leaders through different emotional or mental health challenges without pushing them into shame or silence?
Big deep breath there. There's so much work that needs to be done. I think acknowledging that there is a stigma around it and to start normalizing that we are human and humans have emotions and humans have suffering and humans have difficult things that happen in their lives. And to be able to embrace that through education, whether they're teaching through their ERGs or offering classes around that. There's some newer positions in organizations that have been created, the chief wellness officer creating initiatives that help support mental health and wellness in the workplace. I think that the holistic picture of wellness is not just how is my mental health, but how like all of our functions are together. How am I taking care of my body? What am I eating? How am I sleeping? What's my exercise like? Am I getting out in the sun at all? Am I stretching? All
Right.
those things really matter. And what am I doing with community? But I think the biggest obstacle is the stigma that still lies around it and being able to say we're all human, all dealing with similar things.
Thank you for that. It is so important. I've had some conversations with leaders, very vulnerable conversations, and it's difficult to have the conversation, right? Because as the person coming in, they've likely never shared that within their organization. No one knows what's going on except them. And there is such a wall of shame, if you will, and fear, right?
Hmm.
Such a big fear around what will people think? What will happen to my job? Am I going to get in trouble or just be seen a different way? And that's so important as we work towards some of these things that you're bringing up in the book and really what you're working on. Just like you said, we are human. There's probably the person who's, writing things down in your personal folder has their own things that
Mhm.
they're working on. So just getting rid of that fear. All right, as we wrap up Evolve, Michelle, what does the future of leadership look like if emotional wellness becomes a non-negotiable skill?
Oh my gosh, that would just be beautiful. Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit if we can navigate in that space of welcoming emotion, welcoming how I'm socially aware of somebody, how I know how to deal with emotion, how I can help somebody else deal with their emotion. And again, I think we talked about it, negatively charged emotions. Oftentimes people will be like, this is a good emotion, this is bad. And emotions are just a way that we're showing up in the world, how we're perceiving what's going on around us. And so when we can say, well, this is a negatively charged emotion, but it doesn't make it a bad emotion, I'm just feeling this heavily. How do I turn that into an action that I can do something with? But we are moving so quickly through the world, having those places to pause and reflect and then take action would be so beneficial. I mean, that's like heaven on earth right there.
It's so true. And I love what you said, like sky's the limit, because if we think about it, and I don't know what your work has been like with different generations, but I'm reading a new book also. It's called Z Economy and it's by Jason Dorsey. We're not here to push books on anyone, but these are great resources. And it's all about Gen Z. And when we think about the way that that generation is influencing the older generations when it comes to just being okay with not being okay. It's so impactful. I agree with you. And as we evolve and continue to grow, and people see that it's safe, they feel
Mhm.
safe enough, they can actually have those conversations. I just want to wrap up a little bit. I do have a bonus question for you if you're up for it. What would be one lesson from your book, Michelle, Cracked Open? What would be one lesson that you hope every leader reads and really lives?
I'm just going to quote Mary Oliver on that one, where she says, tell me, what is it that you want to do with your one wild and precious life?
Mm.
Right? You have one life and let's live it. Let's embrace the emotion. Let's embrace the dynamics in the room. Let's really do this well.
Yeah, I love that. That is so good. That is so good. I have absolutely enjoyed this. Just like every other conversation that we've had, I'm like glued to your words and listening and learning. I mean it. I really am. I love that part about being able to bring people in and just showcase your gifts and your talents because you have a story that you've shared and you've shared it so vulnerably. The impact that you're having on readers and your clients, it's just immense. I'm just so grateful that you were a guest today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's been delightful.
For everyone who is interested in learning more about Michelle, you can check out her new book, Cracked Open. You can buy that anywhere you find your favorite books. You can also Google her at Five Oaks Counseling and Coaching. And she's very active, right, Michelle, on LinkedIn?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, super. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, be well and lead well. I hope you're feeling inspired and encouraged as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve through whatever you need to today. Remember, true leadership starts within. For more resources, visit perpetualcapacity.com. Until next time, keep growing and leading on this journey we call life.